BJ Counsel. I view the world through the lens of having been followed by a white clerk as a child while shopping in a five and dime. I'm a retired police executive and own UN50, which gives guidance on surviving interactions with police.
I'm Harmony Chavis, and I view the world through the lens of one of the most misunderstood and diverse generations in our nation's history. I'm a social worker and a believer of radical kindness and love as modalities of healing.
My name is Andrew Counsel. I view the world through the lens of a generational camera phone. I wake up as a black male and go to bed as a black male. I am surviving this never-ending court case we commonly call life in the best way I know how.
All right, so welcome back to UN50. For those of you that we are recording out of the Bull City in Durham, North Carolina. And this is the podcast of We Are Allies. And UN50, for those of you that may not know, is a business that goes around and helping people learn how to safely interact with law enforcement and also helping the community figure out how they can hold their law enforcement accountable and to the service that they're getting from their local agency. And this podcast is made up of colleagues of mine, ex-colleagues, and now ex-retired colleagues of mine who are going to help. Today, in particular, we're going to be talking about what is it from our experiences and the information that we have to help you figure out what it is that you can do to become involved with law enforcement in your community and helping you hold them accountable and what that looks like. So we have Jesse Burwell, Assistant Chief, retired, and Terrence Sembly, Deputy Chief, who is also retired, and then my nephew, Andrew Counsel. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and get started. So what we want to try to do today, the discussion is how you become involved, what that looks like for you as a community member. And I'm gonna let Jesse Burwell start because his background, and he was our fiscal manager. And I forgot, Sembly, what did you guys call him? I called him Mr. Cash. What did you guys call him?
Yeah, I forget. I just called him, what was it? Just the money
man. Money man.
Yeah.
He's a money man. Yeah, he took care of all the stuff, and he basically helped us in the agency to get what they needed. He understood. He worked there long enough to understand what we needed to be an effective and a community policing oriented agency. So he gets that from a budgetary and fiscal manager perspective, which is important because one of the things I was reading several months ago that people have said everybody's protesting, talking about police reform, but the ugly side of all of that is budget. Yeah, you got to talk money before anything else is going to happen. So Jesse, let's start with you from your perspective as a fiscal manager and a guy that helped agencies our agency become really good at doing community-oriented policing. What would you offer to community members to get involved?
Well, the city of Durham always offered citizens the opportunity to participate in the budget process, and particularly the police department's budget process. You have, as a community member, the right and the opportunity to speak out publicly at city council and budget meetings as to, what you think your police department should have or shouldn't have. So you have that opportunity. And you have that opportunity every year. I can remember when I was there that we met with each district, 1 through 5, to talk about what the community wanted to see the police department have as far as resources, additional new resources to get the job done. And the number of people to come out and speak at these meetings is not very large.
Right.
It's hard to get people to come out and participate unless it's hard to get them to do that on a regular basis unless they're really ticked off about something.
Right.
And when I was there, one of the things that I was responsible for was the police department's community services division. And we had a lot of outreach programs, and it was really a small number of people that would come out and participate. So the opportunity is there. And maybe we have to do a better job of making the community aware of these opportunities. But you have opportunities, various opportunities to work with us. And, you know, that's what we want. We can't stop. We got to continue our efforts to improve our relationship with the community and build back that trust, because I think in the eyes of a lot of minority communities right now, there's a lack of trust because they see a lack of accountability and a lack of transparency as far as law enforcement is concerned. Whether that's real or not, it depends on who you talk to. But I think there have been so many failures to indict officers and so many acquittals that folk just don't believe that they can get any kind of justice. But the more you participate with law enforcement, you will be better able to understand why it is that we do some of the things that we do, and you begin to build back that trust with more familiarity with law enforcement.
So Jesse, I want to go back to the part about you guys went out to the 5 districts, or I guess, is that what I heard you say? You would go out to the 5 districts?
Yeah.
So how could we improve on that? Because it's always about, like you said, we all see the same people at the same meeting. All the same community members are always at the same meeting, and it usually doesn't go any further than that. So, if you were to offer suggestions to community members, what could they ask of their local agency to make that piece? Because I think, if I heard you correctly, if they come to the meetings, they kind of get some sense of how law enforcement operates, and maybe even can figure out that we are actually being held accountable, but it's kind of under that budgetary piece. How would, if it's not convenient, you think that if by them coming and then they're voicing their opinions about, that's not convenient for me to come at that time. It would be convenient for me to come at this time. They community members have that, they have that power. You think that would help some of that?
Yeah, I think that would help some of that. But, the community leaders, the leaders, there are community leaders in each district.
Right.
And, it would be incumbent upon them to tell us how we could get more people to participate. I mean, we've tried everything that we know to do.
Right.
And, you have the same people all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to increase that, I would say we're open to suggestions.
Right.
And that those suggestions need to come from the people that know their communities.
Right. And I know I was looking at Terrence shake his head. I mean, it really is the same folks at the same meeting all the time, at the same time. And so they know, but not the broader part of the community or that. But the thing is that we want people to understand that most law enforcement agencies want you to come to the meeting and hear. They do. The budget is public, and we're more than willing to have you hear that. And for those communities that's not happening in, we're suggesting to you to go to City Hall or whoever and say, when you have these meetings about your budget, we want to be a part of that. I mean, most people know that budget hearings are public, but specifically, can the police department come and talk to us about that stuff? So, yeah, it's just trying to meet people where they are, and that's kind of difficult. Yeah. So, what do you think, Chief Terrence?
I agree 100%. And to I don't know if you're ready or not to move away from just the budget part.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
All of this is kind of inclusive.
Yeah.
Everything that Jesse just said as it pertains to the budget process pertains to community involvement in the police department in general.
Right.
What people need to do is, when I say people, the citizens of Durham, is to educate themselves on how city government works as a whole.
Right.
Including the police department. And my example is, if you want to, let's go to complaints. If you want to file a complaint or something like that, understand the process.
Right.
And
Right.
more comes out of following a process in anything that you do than it does from just being loud sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The police department in particular, there are several things that the community can do to get involved. And I'll say this, coming from the law enforcement side, community policing in my eyes, coming from the law enforcement side, is missing the community piece.
Right.
We need more involvement in the community piece of community policing. A lot of times police departments, they want to, people in general, the citizens, the community, the government, they want to start programs, and the programs end up being dropped in the laps of the police department,
right,
being managed by the police department when it should be managed by the citizens.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
So things as simple as come to a Citizens Police Academy. That way you learn about how the police department works in all aspects. So they have Citizens Police Academies all the time, and it's a very good program.
Yes.
Go to a PAC meeting. They have them in all 5 districts. Go to the PAC meeting. Go to community events. Like Jesse was saying earlier, the police department sponsors a whole lot of stuff in the community policing division. They've got camps, all types of programs. Mm-hmm. But when I hear sometimes, it's disheartening to hear sometimes some of our community leaders say, we need more programs. And I've had a discussion with several in private in meetings,
yeah.
Meet with the chief and this, that, and this and that, and it always comes out, you need more programs. And my response is usually something to the effect of, if you as a community member can put more butts in these seats of the programs we do have, we would offer more programs. But why do you need 10 programs and it's 2 or 3 people, if that, in each program? So we have to work on that, and that's really something that needs to come from the community. We will go to some of the housing communities for monthly meetings, but nothing's in place to make the membership or the residents come to the meeting. So when you're sponsoring a meeting for a specific area, for the residents in a specific area, and the residents don't come out, but you have people from your various city and county departments that are there to answer questions, and you went out and you got snacks and you got this and you got that, but no one is participating. So we're missing the community part. I'm not going to say missing. We need to improve the community part of community policing, but it's something that's easy to get involved in. It's a place to voice your opinions, and even in the PAC meetings, as you know, BJ, because you've always supported your local PAC. A lot of issues that the community have don't even involve the police or the police department.
Yeah, exactly.
So there are a lot of complaints that they have that don't even involve the police department, but there are people from all aspects of city government and county government that are there to answer these questions, that you get the same core group.
Yes.
So I'll say all that to say this for a solution. Keep bringing up problems without solutions.
Yeah.
Every community group, and Durham has a lot of them.
Yes.
If they would just appoint someone within their group to go to certain meetings, that, I mean, you know, you just decide, just like we were in the police department.
Yeah.
You were assigned to go to this, you were assigned to go to that. Assign people from your various groups to attend meetings, and then bring to and from what you learned in the meeting. Take your message there, bring a message back. But that would be great if we can get somebody from all the groups to attend a PAC meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Someone from all the groups to join the Citizens Police Academy, because you know, if you're going to go somewhere and complain or do whatever you're going to do, you want to go with as much information as you can. You don't want to base it on just what you hear on the news or what your next door neighbor said. Get your facts together and then go do whatever it is you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love that idea. I love that. I mean, that just makes perfect sense, because you're right. Durham has got a lot of organizations, and if they were just to send them, to that particular PAC meeting. And for those of you that not from Durham, that's called Partners Against Crime. It's a community policing philosophy and organization that the Durham Police Department started back in the 80s. I believe it was the 80s. Under, I think, Jackie McNeil, and also another friend of ours, Steve Chalmers, who was early on the podcast. And you're right, early on when they started that, one of the policing was number 5, I think Steve says. When we went in and asked community members what were their concerns, you know, recreation, housing, you know, those types of things. But the policing issues were 5th, I think he said, 5th or 6th. It wasn't number 1, was the bottom line. And so the thing is, I think wherever your community is, in order to find out about what your law enforcement agency is doing, is contact them. They will know a lot of these meetings, and then that in turn, if they're working collectively with city, that was the other thing that was unique for Durham. I think we ended up bringing representatives from city government departments, came to these Partners Against Crime meetings. So you had access to code enforcement. So you could say, I got a neighbor that's got 2 cars standing on bricks in my neighborhood. I know that's not right. Can you do something about it? And those issues were addressed. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we could get people to kind of come to these meetings and voice their concerns. And then, like you said, that kind of helps take some of the sticky of law enforcement, because we don't do some of the stuff that they want us to do that doesn't really rest with us. So yeah. And then understanding the budget, you know, how that actually works, you know, in relationships to accountability. You know, we have X amount of dollars that we need to do stuff. And for those that, you know, maybe joining us for the first time, we did a mock defund the police, because people talking about that. You got to understand that the budget, what do you say, Jess, is 96% is salary and benefits.
Yes, it's about 90% salaries and benefits and about 10% operating.
Yeah. And so people, and that's the information you would learn when you come to these meetings. And then, you know, but some people don't want to be at the table, guys.
That's right.
You know, you, Sharon, she said, you know, you being loud, but you're not at the table. You don't, for whatever reason, you won't sit down with us.
Right.
We all got to be at the table.
That's right.
We all got to be at the table. So, Andrew, you got anything? Any comments?
I was thinking about something that you were mentioning about just becoming aware and educating yourself. I think when the question about what can citizens do, I think just being aware and educating themselves about, like you said, the different facets that go into policing just in general, so that they can know and understand who to go to when they have a problem and how to go about it. Like you said, I've heard in different spaces or seen myself about people complaining about problems, but don't want to sit at the table to actually enforce the solution. Like you mentioned, a lot of people like to say a lot of problems, but don't like to give solutions. And I think that's something that would be important in the future.
So what would you do? I know you've just moved, or you're moving to a new little town. So do you plan on getting involved? How would you begin to figure out your role in making a difference in the community that you're about to move into?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think something that I was thinking when you were talking a little bit earlier was like I don't have a background in law enforcement at all, like y'all do. So I guess like my facet would be working with people my age and understanding that we're the ones who will have to grow up in this future that you all are living in, or that we're trying to build for us in the future. So I guess understanding about what future do we want to have, what do we want policing to look like in the future for us, because I'm what's the word I want to use? I guess my generation can sometimes be, as we see, very poignant and aggressive in a way, but I don't like to use the word aggressive because sometimes it can have a negative connotation. But the way that we handled some of the protests that happened last year, I use the word aggressive, but I think it was positively aggressive in a way, because I think it achieved a lot of things, and we pulled from a lot of a variety of different other protests that were happened in the past, before we were ever born or even thought of, really. So I think just being able to understand what place my generation has in regard to building the future that we want.
Yeah, I think so. Jesse, do you have anything else to?
In order for the relationship between law enforcement and the community to get back to where it was, people have got to come to the table and start a dialogue, because you're not going to resolve anything unless you have adequate participation. And so both sides have got to figure out how to get more people to the table. And because it's really law enforcement, it goes without saying that you got to have law enforcement. If you don't have law enforcement, you have lawlessness. And law enforcement, to me, is more successful when you have the community's trust, cooperation, and the community is working with you in partnership. So we kind of both, in a sense, need each other and need cooperation, so that, we can have the best community possible as far as being, crime free. And police help the communities resolve other issues that improve improve living for the community. So, we got to figure out that how to get more people to the table. And really, that would be more on the community to help figure that out. Mm-hmm. Because I think have tried pretty hard for all the years that I was at the police department, and you still just had a small core group of folk that would come to the programs that we had and that would come to the meetings that we had related to law enforcement, and that needs to improve going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Terrence, you got anything on that?
Yeah, I'll say to Andrew, your background, you don't have a law enforcement background, but you have a background in humanity, and that says a lot when it's time to go out to wherever it is that you're going and getting involved. People have to want to respect and treat each other fairly and things like that. That's where it begins. Going back to some of the things and bringing people to the table, you have to come to the table with an open mind. You can have your agenda, but like I said, if you come what I call unloaded means without due research, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If you come unloaded and you hear something that you didn't think about, it might need to change your agenda a little bit.
Yeah.
I would like to see the Durham community think why can't Durham be the model
Right.
model city in all aspects? There are things going on all over the world, but we've got to take care of our house first. We've got to improve our house before we can improve the neighborhood, before we can improve the city. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We got to start right here. And
Yeah.
people have their ways and they have their ideas, and that's all well and fine, but it needs to come together to fix Durham, not Texas or not Raleigh or not Ferguson or anything like that. And we deal with, everyone's problems are unique to where they are.
Exactly.
That's very important. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to fix our issues.
Yeah.
Defund the police, however anyone wants to define it, has to be defined how it would work best for Durham.
Right. Yep.
Before we can go out on how it's going to work somewhere else.
Exactly. And I think, I don't know whether we've talked about it before, because I am of the opinion that police reform is going to happen at the local level, and it's going to happen at the street level. Because I also believe that how officers interact is going to set the tone for how they view your local agency. And they got to be at the table for that. So yeah, that's a very, very local kind of thing that it's got to be, because some communities might we like it the way it is, and we might look at that community as like, ooh, that's kind of messed up. But for that community, if that's how they roll, that's just how they roll, and that's okay.
Right.
But you got to make sure for those, if that's what you want, you got to be involved with that. In at least my opinion, you need to be involved with that. And I think one of the position that I was going to be taking a little bit was, you also got to vote. you also got to vote, because Terrence, you were talking about having a representative from all the organizations, but then you also got to participate in the process to have that voice that you're saying is speaking for you. And then maybe you don't have to go to these meetings, because now you have an official that supposedly is voting, or at least is believing in the same things that you, whatever that is. I'm not trying to choose the aisles. I'm just saying, so if that's what you want, you gotta participate in the process.
Absolutely.
You gotta participate in the process. I've been looking at the, all these, the Kerner Commission that we're all familiar with, the Watts riot, all the way back up to 1919. I've just been doing a little bit of research just to kind of, because some other stuff is going on. I'm just kind of trying to familiarize myself with these things. And what it comes down to is these commissions, who are done by elected officials, right? They're, the president, the mayor, all these commissions are by elected officials from 1919, up to Kerner and then whatever. And they all had the same DNA: housing, discrimination, joblessness, medical, and police brutality. From 1919, these commissions identified, and the same thing in all these commissions, all the way. And the politicians that were in charge, some of them just put the stuff aside. One of them didn't even report it. Some newspaper had to actually bring it to light. So I guess for me, when I look at that and the stuff that we're talking about, you got to be involved. And the bottom line is, you really do have to participate in the voting process to get people in place. Because if people had been in place, we know Black folks weren't voting then. So they recognize, we're talking commissions that were full of white males who said out loud that we were responsible for the way Black bodies and their experience were, but yet did not do anything after they had these commissions stand up. So that to me paints this, we got to put folks in there who are going to do a commission and then follow up on those policies and procedures. I mean, it's, I don't know, when I look at that, it just lets us know, lets me know, just validates that we got to vote. We got to participate in this process for your community. You do, you got to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's just mind-boggling, I think, as I'm reading some of this stuff as to how they were just so, yeah, this is the reason, white folks are, they were even, one said, white people were responsible for the racism, and the disparaging of Black bodies. But when it came to implementing the things they said, those elected officials did not do that, even though they created the commissions. So, and that's not like that's not a study from a college. That's not a RTI study. Those are elected officials who made these commissions and then turned around and did not do what their commissions they stood up said needed to be done since 1919.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the same thing, Terrence. We're still talking about joblessness, living wages, medical. We're talking from 1919. We're still talking about it. And
we're still talking about it because the rules still keep changing. Even though they set a standard that they don't want to follow. If you think about it, most of the organizations and clubs and anything else that people are a part of fail a lot of times because they're not following their own rules. You can't put rules and regulations together and then break them yourself. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And Andrew, you're talking about what you guys, your generation, I mean, you're probably looking at our generation and y'all screwed up, but if you look at the history, it's been doing that. So it's like, how do you guys get involved in electing the folks that are going to do the work? That's already been, the history already says, we already know what happened, what's wrong. And how are you guys going to do that? I mean, what is it going to take? What you guys are going to be the ones that are going to have to hold people's feet to the fire. And I guess that's why you're protesting.
Yeah, I think I'm not trying to be the spokesperson for, all
I know, but I'm just saying, yeah.
But I think we do it. I would say for the majority, we do a good job of holding those who we put in office accountable for the things that they made the choices for. So I know when I was in college, there was a lot of work done to make sure that we were registered to vote and that we were educated on who we're voting for. Because before I got to, I think my senior year in college, I never really researched the actual people who I was voting for. It was either you voted for the party that you abided by. You didn't really look into actually what they believed in, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I want listeners to take away is that, you got to get involved, do some research to see where your police department is having community meetings. No matter how large or small you are, they're having community meetings and they have their own programs, and they'll let you know, or there's usually somebody in city government who does public affairs or community work, and you can find out how to get involved. But it takes a little bit of time. But I really like Terrence's idea. If there are organizations in your community, identify or rotate that. That somebody goes to these meetings so they can bring them back to you and do that. That's an excellent idea. I mean, that would just, share the responsibility throughout the organization just to go to these meetings, the ones that you, especially budget meetings, and like Jesse was talking about, you get to find out what the police department is spending their money on, but also you get to figure out, so the Parks and Rec, they got a building over here that's not open because they don't have staff. So, you can now put input into that. Okay, well, we need to put money on that. And so that way the kids in that community have somewhere to go besides possibly, just hanging out on a corner, or you're not saying they're doing anything bad, but at least gives them a safe space to be. And that's the power that you have as a community member, because you're saying, we want this Parks and Rec place open, but that's only going to be open if what did you say, Terrence? Loud voices, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you scream loud enough. Yeah, and that works too. I mean, that doesn't it? I mean, I know it works. I mean, I remember it working when people start getting loud. City government's like, they start hearing.
But I say about that though, you're right. Well, if it doesn't do anything else, it gets attention.
Yep.
It might not get you results, but it's gonna get attention.
Yeah, exactly. And they're gonna remember you. And sometimes things are done. sometimes definitely things are done. I mean, I think people also need to understand that sometimes the budget is just not, I mean, they're doing all they can do based on what the budget is, because then you start getting into, well, we might have to raise your taxes. You know, then it starts getting complicated, you know. So you want us to staff 5 of these places. Well, we might have to add a penny or a half a cent onto your property tax, whatever that looks like. So people have to kind of weigh, you know, what's important to them. But I think the main thing that I wanted to kind of get over the night and try to help people, you got to get involved. You got to talk, you got to figure out what it is that you want and how you want your local agency to deliver service to your community, not Durham, but, you know, wherever your community lies. Yeah. Jesse, you got anything else as far as, you know, budget and what, you know, would it be reasonable to tell people to look at their city government and just kind of find out when are those public meetings are occurring?
The budget office sends that meeting information out. Like, they know who the community leaders are in your PACs. When they set up these meetings with the PACs, they let the PAC leaders know when these budget meetings are in each of the 5 districts. And then it's responsible for that PAC leadership to get that out to their membership. And just traditionally, when I was there, just a whole lot of people just didn't show up. You had a core group in each PAC district that would show up, and in a lot of meetings, you would probably have more government officials there, local government officials there, than the community.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was. And I know everybody that participates in the budget process, as far as, you know, being part of the city is concerned, would like to see more input from the communities and not just the few.
Yeah, that's true. And I want to just talk about real quick, Terrence, on recruiting of Black bodies in this moment. I was listening to, I was down in a small, down in Kinston, talking to some folks down there. And I don't know why, I'm glad I was sitting down, like, they're 21 and 22-year-olds are lining up. You know, Andrew, I mean, they're coming into law enforcement. And one of the things that's missing are seasoned officers. You know, one of the things they were saying, I mean, just, you know, you and I were out there and we were trained by obviously our senior person, but then there were a bunch of other senior officers, seasoned officers that kind of guided us along. But that just that's not today. Your sergeants are probably less than 10 years, 5 years, 7 years, some of them. And then your recruiting officers are probably less than 5 years and they're recruiting folks. So before you answer, what I was telling them, the bottom line is that people like Andrew and Ages is they grew up with Trayvon Martin. And so they're now being police officers, which, instead of looking at it as we can't recruit anybody, I think those young folks who are now becoming police officers is the next generation. Because if they still want to be a police officer from the moment of Trayvon Martin and all the stuff that happened since him, and they're now still wanting to be a police officer, that to me says a lot about them, because that means they really understand, they want to try to make a difference. I don't know how you feel about that, but I was like, let's stop looking at it as we can't recruit them, but look at the ones that are coming in because they were raised in this moment and they still want to put on that uniform. I can't say I would, but I'm just saying, I think that's just interesting, and we need to give them their kudos for that, because that's pretty huge.
Yeah, I agree, and I give them kudos as well. And it's funny we're talking about this because I'm helping a young lady from NCCU. She's, you know, getting ready to graduate, and you know, they have to do this and have to do whatever they're doing in college now. You're so old now, you don't know, right? So I was helping her and, you know, answering some of her questions. And it is about law enforcement. So she emailed the other day just asking some of the same things we're talking about what are the problems within the Durham Police Department and other departments in recruiting, and is generational gaps part of the problem. So
Yes.
helping her out with that, and they were very good questions. I don't. One of them was, does Durham Police Department or other departments I know have racial issues going on within the department?
Right.
So, I was answering those questions, but I like the fact that we do. I'm surprised that with what's going on, that people are coming into law enforcement, particularly people of color.
Yeah.
But it's good to see. But the main reason I say that is because I think a lot of it, when the ones that are coming want to serve.
Right.
It's in their heart to serve.
Yes.
Because we all know everybody that wants to come and be a police officer, it's not for everybody.
Right.
So that's where it starts. You have to have the heart to serve. The recruiting issue is an issue. Everybody is trying to recruit from the same barrel of recruits, and that's all over the country. We really don't care. But one thing that's gonna happen, what I mean by we don't care, is you can be in Raleigh and you can be in Los Angeles. We're all just trying to recruit people who are applying to be police officers.
Yeah, exactly.
The recruiting issue we can talk about all day long. It all comes down, a lot of it comes down to money. A lot of it comes down to money. Now, it's funny that we are the three from the Durham Police Department because we were all working in that recruiting at different levels. I remember when I was a recruiter, and Jesse's always been the money man, and then you were basically in charge of that whole unit at the time because I worked for Forbes.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult, and Jesse, I think will remember this, when you're waiting for the city council or city hall or the city manager, you're ready to start a academy in a month, and they still haven't told you how many people you can hire.
Right.
So then here we are, down to the last minute, and they're saying you could put 40 people in an academy. Well, you're telling us to put 40 people in an academy. We only have 3 weeks to try to identify them, onboard them, hire them, and send them to the academy, in a 3-week to a month period. So that's one of our big issues. I would just like for people to understand part of the process and part of wanting to help your community, especially if you're in your local community, join the police department, be part of the change. One big issue, and BJ, you probably just missed it or was on the end of it. We're going through this generational problem where the old heads, people don't like change.
Right.
So the younger folks, such as Andrew, to come into a police department now, this will be all they know. The older folk like myself, I wasn't good with all this technology.
Right.
I joined the police department, and I know when BJ, he didn't have computers.
Look, was excited to have a bag phone in the car, but go ahead.
You literally opened a map book to try to figure out where you were going.
Yeah.
By doing your finger like this, trying to follow a map.
Yeah.
But now you have I think it's harder on the older officers because they are training younger officers, and there's such a divide there. There is such a divide in especially technology.
Right.
And the younger generation wants something, they want it right now. They don't want to go through a lot to get it now, but they want it right now.
Yeah.
Old school folk, when we will see a transformation once some of the older folks are out and the younger people are actually, that understand each other, are running this department. But we have to remember that when we're trying to recruit, we need to look at who we're sending out to recruit. You don't just let somebody do well on the test and go send them to represent your department.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the game has to change. The military doesn't even do the things the way they used to do it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But when you, and I remember having this conversation with Jesse, when you have an academy, just like anything, if you see a number of people failing a certain part, you need to find out what's going on in that part.
Yeah.
You don't have to just keep doing it.
Yes.
And I'm not saying lower your standard.
Right.
But what I am saying is time for the standards to start changing.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What do you say, Jess? I mean, that makes perfect sense. And I was talking to somebody the other day because I had a minor accident. And I saw, and luckily the guy that came up was somebody that I knew. I mean, it's getting hard for me to know anybody on the street anymore.
Yeah.
And he was just talking about, just what you just mainly what I was saying earlier about seasoned officer talking to some of these young folks on how to interact with folks. I mean, that's just something that's missing. And who do we really need to continue to recruit from military? Maybe we need to go find a person that's good at customer service. The person that knows how to problem solve. I mean, constantly going to the military to get your officers, which, I get not saying that there aren't good folks to come, but we may need to change that up. That's because this is a different world now. We're not, we're trained to expect the worst, but that's not who we're dealing with all the time.
Yeah, but but let me comment on it. I agree with you 100%, but in the recruiting world, you don't have the luxury of dismissing any group.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
My point was, let's say you want to hire this guy. Let's say he is military.
Right.
So it's going to be, I'm going to say the word difficult, but I really don't mean it that way, to recruit people from the military, for example, that don't have tattoos.
Right. Yeah.
But your policy says you can't have any tattoos.
Right. You got to change it.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. You got to change that.
That has to change.
Yes.
If it's not vulgar.
Yes.
I want to say if it's not offending anybody, but everything offends somebody now.
Exactly.
If it's not vulgar and offensive, change your policy. You see, more and more departments are starting to let officers wear beards now.
Yep. Yes.
It may not come here, but you don't overlook probably an excellent candidate because they have tattoos and don't want to wear a sleeve to cover them up.
Right. Exactly.
That's what I mean by things have to change.
Yes. They've got to evolve. It's a different day. I want to go back to the young lady that you are, and I've heard people when you say, she wanted to know whether or not there's a racial, I don't know how you answered that, but
I can tell you how.
But let me put my 2 cents on that, because I've heard that before. It's like, how do you? It's like, at some point, I mean, how do you know that when you're working at the bank and the guy in the next cubicle? Right. I mean, that's just, you don't have to put your legs up on this table, because he doesn't mean spreadsheet. As long as that stuff doesn't pop up at work, because I mean, you and I both know some folks, right, that we work with. Right. Once I leave, bye, that's it. You know what I'm saying? But would go in behind or with him to go to a call, because I just need you to do your job. So, people get hung up on that because, you pull into service stations and get your car done. You just need the best person to get the job done, as long as that stuff doesn't pop up. So, I don't know how you answer that, but folks can't get too, because I have found out a lot about some ex-colleagues after they left the agency that I did not know. That would have been, if I had known then, would have been offensive. But they needed a job. Look, racists need jobs too. They got a mortgage to pay. So they understand how to just keep the head down and get that check.
Right. And my answer was kind of on the lines of, we don't have the issues that are in the news. Right. You know what I'm saying? We don't the Durham, and I only spoke on the Durham Police Department. Yeah. Although I did say I don't think we have the issues of a lot of other departments have had that have been in the news because of those issues. But it did say, it ended it with, there's always room for improvement.
There's always room for improvement. And yeah, and you never know, right? You know, but I think, I don't know, you know, you and Jesse might be that, but folks that come to Durham to be a police officer, they kind of know Durham. You know, if you come into work here, you know our politics and how, you know, it's kind of a left-leaning community. So you kind of, you know, need, when you step in here, if you're going to be the police, you kind of need to understand the politics in this particular community and what is tolerated and or not tolerated, as how the service is going to be. So yeah. So Jesse, anything closing on the recruiting piece? I mean, I think you know, thanks Terrence on your input, because that's cool.
Well, we've got to be flexible going forward recruiting, because for things that aren't that big of a deal, you can't afford to lose good candidates.
Right.
You just can't afford to do it, because, you know, the pool of qualified applicants it's not growing.
Right.
And you got the same number of law enforcement agencies competing for that shrinking pool.
Yeah.
So as long as you don't lower your standards to accept any and everybody, but you want to get every candidate that appears to be a good candidate, you know, you want to give them an opportunity. So you've got to look at some of your hiring policies and change those or revise those that have become outdated.
Exactly. I was talking to somebody whose brother was up north somewhere, and he was in product recruiting, and they couldn't hire quite a few. You know, the Black applicants were kind of falling to the wayside. And when he got in the position, he looked at it had to do with credit. And you know, if you're a good person, but you working at minimum wage, and you know your credit probably raggedy. You know, and but you're a good person. You just can't. And so bottom line is he changed that. And once he changed that, the influx of Black folks, you know, becoming candidates increased, because that was the only thing that was keeping them out. Was the credit? Your credit was messed up, but there was nothing else. It was just, you know, they're working at McDonald's. You know, with all due respect to people working at McDonald's, but if they're trying to do what they got to do, sometimes their credit was raggedy.
It's hard.
It's hard. Minimum wage. Yeah, your credit's probably going to be kind of tore up from the floor up, possibly. So anyway, so thank you. I appreciate you guys' input. The bottom line, we kind of got off on that recruiting piece because you know, one of the things that doesn't necessarily mean that having a Black officer, that things are going to be better in policing. It just means it's a good career. It's a good profession. And I would encourage, because not everybody wants to go to college. And then hopefully the other thing I was reading somewhere else too about, do like the military, you know, offer to pay for degrees, you know, 2 degrees, and you can't, you know, if you want to start going up the chain, you know, at least you got to get an associate's degree to be a corporal or a sergeant, you know, anything higher than that, you need a 4-year degree. But, you know, just to come in the door, get in the door and then start, you know, making it more that they want to stay. So just the folks that are listening, you know, anybody, it's a good profession. And like Terrence said, if you're know folks that are doing it and want to do it and are good in the community and service, that's who we need. That's who we need. It's about customer service and stuff like that, because it's barely 1% of doing the stuff that you see on TV, the panic, and 99% of what we do is sitting around and solving social problems. We're not dealing with violent issues or homicide or rapists and stuff like that. We're really dealing with our citizens who just for every now and then are having a crisis, and we need somebody that's empathetic to that. So if you know folks, send them to the local police department.
That's right.
So Andrew, I know this has kind of been you hadn't really been involved, but you got anything so we can close it out?
I'm trying to think something that could be applicable to what you just said. I guess like building relationships with police is something that has been, I guess, like walking on ice for my generation of people below 30, because I guess they're unsure of, you can't look at a police officer and tell if they're going to be a nice person.
You can't look at anybody to tell that, though.
Right, I agree with it. And
Yeah.
I think that just being able to understand the humanity that's behind the badge,
Yeah.
is something that I
Yeah.
think would be beneficial for my generation or just humans in general.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, Jesse, got anything last parting words?
No, I think it's pretty much all been said.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Jess.
Yeah.
What about you, Terrence?
Just to follow up on what you said about, even asking people to join this profession, especially local people. Some of the best police officers I've ever worked with were people who were from this city.
Yeah, that's right.
They got the most respect. They had street credit. They went through the same training we had, and they loved it. So I'm like you, I would recommend local folks to join your local police departments.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, definitely. Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, Terrence. Thanks, Jesse, for joining us again on We Are Allies. So hopefully, folks, if you're listening, that you're going to get involved with your local agency and find out what, the budgets and stuff. Like I said, it's kind of like not the fun stuff for police reform, but it's the part that can make the difference of the change. And then as we end it, just talking about recruiting, what that looks like. And if you know somebody that has the heart to serve, because we can't train that, as Tony Godwin said on the last podcast, you come to the job with heart, because we can't give you that. And if you know people that just have that, send them to your local agency. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. And as always, stay safe, stay well, peace.